Hey, what's up? It's Tuhu. It's been a while since the last one, hasn't it? 2022's been a weird year for me, so I'm gonna try to make it up to you guys for neglecting the channel for the past year by making two announcements. First, from here on out, starting with this one, the how to use every servant videos will either come out at the end or the start of the year, depending on how I'm feeling, rather than right before anniversary like how I used to do it. And second, I am going full-time content creator at the end of the month, depending on when this video comes out, hopefully within the month of February. So while I'm not used to doing this, I'd appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel and follow both my Twitter and Twitch account because I'll be streaming quite a lot too. So with that little announcement, and since y'all already know the drill by this point, let's finally get into it. Here's how to use every servant in 2023, starting with, of course, the Sabers. You knew we'd start with the poster girl, so here she is. The most versatile farming saber in the game, a certified weeb classic among corn-loving Keikonas everywhere. Charisma, Omega Mana Burst, and Battery, she's got it all. Oh, and did I mention that her Mana Burst changes all of her face cards into busters for easier face carding in case her MP doesn't kill somehow? She's still not great for boss fights, probably because of Lazangel's whole, she's not supposed to be a main character in FGO lore, but that don't stop her from whacking bitches with Excalibur just as hard as whacking Mordred for existing. She's a reliable workhorse saber and handles the down and dirty farming work that 90% of FGO is, so stop bitching whenever you get a saber spook. It could have been a Scheherazade spook instead. Oh, and how could I forget the annual reminder that her name is Artoria, not Altria, because Nasu can go fuck himself. Rip off Sabers Ahoge and you get Salter, who's salty as fuck that Lazangel still hasn't buffed her charisma even after 7 years. They did give her a battery too, but at this point it's kinda like that one meme where the mom's only holding that one kid in the swimming pool while leaving the other kid's ass to drown, but it's at least partially mitigated by the fact that her Shinjuku outfit is fine as hell. Whenever she's not busy streaming, Shy Lily poses as Saber's younger self who mainly stands around and looks cute, which is what she usually does as a VTuber anyway with how much time she spends in the just chatting section. The best parts about her are the fact that she still blows someone's dick off when she NPs, though it's not as obvious in her animation update, and the fact that you can now get her from Friendpoint Gacha in case you need another free-to-play AoE saber not named Fergus or, God forbid, Jason. Gee, Nero, why does Lazangle let you have two costumes? To be fair, I almost don't even count her first outfit because I don't understand the obsession that Japanese men aged 18 to 56 have with bloomers, or at least seem to have, worn by high school girls. It does help though that her second outfit is actually amazing to the point where it's really the only reason to have her, since using her means that you'll eventually have to muster up the courage to press her second skill only to see this pop up twice over her head. Imperial privilege, I can't. Zieg, after years of getting fried by people who hate his ass from APOC, went from being the Sumanai virgin to a complete Giga Chad who deletes anyone or anything St. George calls a dragon. Clearly, Crimhill didn't want to get put into the game until her husbando stopped being a little bitch. Seriously, who the fuck let him cook? If you turn the Charger from Left 4 Dead 2 back into a human, have him keep his huge arm, and give him a sword, you get this guy. Or you could just call him Dangan Tupyaku and be done with it. Quite accurate to his lore of being an expert orator from history, his skills are all about buffing his team and getting them to do more damage. Hell, his third skill is literally called Incite on NA, and his MP makes you wonder why the devs even bother keeping Gilderay in the game still. Attila the Martian? Looks like she'd be right at home with the Native American girls from Azure Lane, especially given that her NP normally drops laser artillery from orbit. Even without it though, she still nukes enemies with her push-pop looking sword that Suter from Arknights may or may not be jealous of. Rayman is Chevalier de Aeon's fellow Frenchman in the Forgotten Sabers Club at your local Chaldea. The only reason why anyone would ever give a shit about him is that his third skill at max level gives him a permanent buster buff, assuming that no enemies have any buff removal. That'd be pretty bad, wouldn't it? Which is unironically good otherwise, and totally explains why his MP is arts. Not that it would have mattered that much anyway, since it does no fucking damage! French Saber's secret mission is to make anyone they meet question their sexuality since they're non-binary, and their NP has a chance to charm them, though to be honest, their Agartha partner Astolfo does a better job of that than they do. They're a utility saber with debuffs in their NP and a taunt, but the only time anyone remembers they exist is when they spook them in Gacha. Wokage is the type of girl to wake up and choose either violence or tuberculosis, depending on what kind of shit Nobu's gotten herself into on any given day, and a lot of the time, it's both. Even before her buffs, she's always been kind of a sleeper hit among the single target Sabers, and her howdy outfit and updated animations are just icing on her buffed kit. Keep her away from any feet lover though, otherwise they'll be doing this to her every chance they get. Fergalicious is definitely one of the guys that they're talking about in the song, but whenever he's not thinking about getting some pussy and or drunk, he's an Unga Bunga Saber with a Berserker deck, and his kit is a literal translation of his favorite hobbies. Skills that give him more damage and more defense to last longer, just don't use the second skill whenever you want to actually give him those attack buffs. Otherwise, quite appropriate for a guy who only thinks with his sword all the time, half of it with his hands and the other half with his legs. Mordred is that kid who'd get taped to the wall if her dad ever got the chance. Not surprisingly, she's got some daddy problems, one of which is trying to do what Saber does, but not being as good at it unless she's throwing her sword at her dad, and he 20 copies of her and counting that exists at this point in the game. The hilarious part is that for the first few years of the game, Morty actually was a better farming Saber than Artoria was, until Rick decided to go to the future and come back with a battery of his own and a mana burst buff just for good measure. Nero got pissed that Talamo came out as a 5-star servant and not her at the beginning of the game, so she bribed Delightworks back in the day to give her a 5-star version of her own, so, Delightworks being the Nero simps that they are, we have Nero waifu. I'm not kidding. That's the entire point of this version of her, if the fact that she debuted on the game's first Valentine's event doesn't further make that obvious enough. She's most well known for her first skill when it got that 30% charge buff back in the day, though its impact's been negated by the fact that Castoria exists. Still, she's a solid single-target Arch Saber with an MP buff and can play any role in an Arch team, assuming that her 2 Buster cards don't get in your way, and I'm not talking about her boobs. While multi-blood players are wondering to themselves when Shiki's gonna show up in Type Lumina, she's bing chilling in FGO as a 5-star AoE Saber as one of her forms. So, Majin Obama better start shoving more coins into those FGO arcade cabs if they want her to manifest in Lumina too. Other than her insta-kill, which is a meme in FGO 99% of the time, her biggest calling card is the AoE debuff cleanse on her NP, which is very nice to have in the days of prehistoric FGO when Castoria wasn't the only servant you see on your support caster slot. Also, a public service announcement to remind you all that anyone calling Saber Shiki a bad servant only watches JP servant demonstration videos on YouTube and types Honore Arcade into the JP FGO stream chats, so therefore stacks no paper and gets no bitches. Speaking of FGO AC, Ranma 1/2 is still looking for the other half, because little does he know she's still being held hostage in Arcade. He's the Krillin we have at home, who throws Destructo Discs at any demonic enemy to obliterate them, just like how Frieza obliterated himself. Only problem is that other than an animation update, La Zengle hasn't brought him back to life at all with any buffs, so his year 1 looking ass really only hangs around eating bananas or something. But hey, they announced a collab with Arcade, so surely that means we'll finally get Sita in mobile, right? Right? Arknights players like to meme about NTR, but little do they know that FGO players have been dealing with that shit for real for longer than Arknights has even existed as a game because of this dude, and if they're not careful, Saberlot's gonna NTR them too with Neural. Whenever he's not NTRing people though, he runs his sword through enemies with arts crits and, ironically, bonks them like he's sending them to horny jail. He's been real quiet though ever since Saber Hokusai showed up, probably for more reasons than just one, but if she doesn't exist yet in your Chaldea, he's pretty good. Just keep him away from your favorite waifus. Gawain the Gorilla, a distant relative in Kyla's extended family, is in many ways like Fergus if you gave him an extra star in rarity. They're both AoE Buster Sabers with Berserker decks, and they both love him some females, though unlike Fergus, Gawain is strictly only into the girls, especially with those with big tits, the bigger the better, as Passionlip can tell you. Remember to use his second skill first before his first one though to get his environmental buff, and he'll be another great farming Saber in case you don't have enough party cost to fit Artoria or somebody else if they don't exist on your account yet. Actually, how do you even have Gawain to begin with? Did you roll Story Gotcha by any chance, you fucking degenerate? Epic 7 has Hand Guy, but FGO has Arm Guy, and he's the perfect husbando for the ladies who have a butler fetish thanks to his skin, or watched Black Butler 13 years ago. And don't let his 3-star rarity and butler appearance fool you, he can slap the ever-living shit out of anyone you want him to as a single target, especially if he ever decides to recruit the assistance of a fellow service industry worker we'll be getting later this anniversary. Speaking of degenerates, we have Saber Liz running around in bikini armor that doesn't even fit properly because she doesn't even have the tits for it, and with a third skill that might as well not even exist in the first place, so, yeah, have fun recreating year 1, where most servants didn't have a third skill, and I don't know about you, but I don't need Exhibit working for Lazangle asking me if I want gotchas in my gotchas. Is the Nook of FGO. We aren't supposed to know who she is or why she's in our Chaldea because we aren't supposed to know anything about her. You could even say that all of our data on her just got, lost at one point. I don't know. I get the feeling that she's supposed to be another gorilla saber who just hits big red buttons as big as her titties are if all the fan art people make of her is to be believed. On a totally unrelated note though, who's this girl and why is she in that new Fate game? The King Arthur of the Nasuverse if the fucking eggplant guy didn't gender bend his ass, and it turns out that he's the guy she told you not to worry about, and God forbid she sees him in his tuxedo. Just like his gender bend, he too is an AoE Buster Saber, but he's got a power mod against Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, Hades, and Hades 2 whenever Supergiant Games releases that, and he can now slap you with crits hard enough to make you forget that it used to be an instinct skill. Susie was doing water blades with her Buster cards before her little Genshin bro made it meta, except hers generates a wave of crit stars when her first skill is active so that she can use them the next turn to crit some bitches with a crit buff she also gets. And as of her MP buff, she has an easier time using her arts cards to charge her MP back up to do it all over again. Now all we need to do is manifest her Santa version into mobile with that arcade collab. Sorry, Sita Wanters. Speaking of servants with a Santa version that's only in arcade, here's Saberfran who wants to remind you to conserve electricity just so that the AC can run a little better. Her game plan consists of hypercharging her NP, stripping one enemy of their buffs, and buffing her own NP so that she can shove her oversized laser beam sword that totally wasn't inspired by a Covenant plasma sword down their throats. Also keep her around in the event that an old British guy ever starts slipping back into his old habits of creating another criminal underworld and launching cruise missiles from his own coffin. And speaking of the older guys now, Ayatos and Ayaka's granddad from another universe can disarm one enemy by slapping them with attack debuffs for one turn so potent that they basically turn into one of those wacky inflatable guys at your local car dealership. But City Man doesn't just protect, he also attack, with one turn arts crits that help him charge his MP, which in turn means more attack debuffs onto the enemy he's dueling, and therefore even less damage that your team needs to deal with. His MP is one of the most stylish MPs in the game, and makes you wonder if he says nothing personal when using it. First we have Siegfried, and now we have Sigurd, who's the second guy she told you not to worry about, but this time she's actually telling the truth since Sigurd already has Brynhilde, and it's Bryn you should be more worried about if we're being honest with ourselves. Just like his alternate German self, he slaps the ever-living shit out of dragon enemies and has a casual outfit that makes you really glad he's already got a waifu of his own. Otherwise, he might steal yours on accident whenever he's not busy summoning some blue eyes white dragons and Tricky during his time off. FGO's resident gaslight gatekeep girl boss has a saber form, probably because she's handled so many swords of a different kind while in her rider class that the throne decided to make her a saber too, because why the hell not at this point, you are what you eat after all. She's another single target art saber, but not a great one at that, no thanks to her abysmal attack rating, and probably the fact that she does damage by taking selfies with the target, which, to be fair, is completely in character for her. Deer Mud, the saber version. Type Moon's made an entire career bullying the fuck out of this dude, and it's no different here in FGO, even when they made the saber version of him that's basically unremarkable in every way other than the fact that it somehow exists. The best thing that's come out of this dude was a new Discord emote that people spammed for a few months on the subreddit Discord before they forgot about that too. Finally, a 4-star support saber who isn't complete dog shit. The fact that he's also a femboy may be a bonus for some of you. He's got a charisma, targetable 20% battery, and party arts buff. All he's missing are a few dragon summons and a new supporter class that doesn't exist yet in FGO. So you know the red burb named Gumi who's become a meme on YouTube, the one that has a cute little laugh and then stares at you like it knows all of the sins you've committed in the last 12 years of your life? Well, we have Gumi at home in Chaldea, but her name is Benny. Enma is just her title because she's a judge of hell, and well, she's about to judge the shit out of you for not washing your fucking rice. For someone who literally shows up with a rice ladle in her first ascension because she forgot her damn sword or something, Dechi is a whole grab bag of support and utility effects, combining an AoE NP seal and crit chance debuff with up to a 50% attack buff and 20% charge for her team, and that's before her single target arts NP that does bonus damage against chaotic and or evil enemies. She also has a confirmed alter form Storm in Lost Belt 7. Now imagine this version of Benny calling you an idiot sandwich. Indian Jeanne d'Arc is still wondering why the hell this French dude with bug eyes keeps following her around, and why there's like 3 other girls running around Chaldea who look just like her if she were European. Truly a certified Takeuchi moment. She's a support saber with a quick AoE NP, and 2 of her skills have RNG effects that rely on her using her 3rd skill for its buff success buff first, so your mileage may vary with her from decent to why the fuck would I use her if I already have Summer Okitan on JP. Kazuma somehow got isekai'd again and ended up in FGO of all places as a 1-star, and for some reason Megumin turned into a lavender-haired yandere who's gonna shank him in the back someday, and Darkness is now a giant who has a habit of picking him up and chucking him at enemies as part of his own NP animation. And if either of them don't kill him one day, Atalanta's got an arrow with his name on it. And for some reason, he has a skill that buffs them all, but doesn't buff himself. Except for that charisma buff, I guess. What do you mean his name is Jason? Ina's spiritual cousin in a swimsuit, which is actually torture for Ina for 2 very specific reasons. She has a very similar playstyle to Saberlot from before, just with a different deck, but the main difference between them is that Saber Hokusai is welfare, and, well, Saberlot isn't, unless you never played Summer 4. Better start praying to Lozangle for them to bring summer events back as main interludes, because they do that all the time, right? We all know about that haunted Astolfo Bean plushie that sucks your dick and calls you gay. Turns out, he's a servant in FGO, and this is his Saber version. Don't let Giguk find out about him. While he's surprisingly not as big of a train wreck of a servant as he seems to be at first glance, the fact that he has a skill dedicated to buffing the 1 buster card in his deck gives me a goddamn aneurysm just thinking about it. The twins spent all of Lost Belt 5.2 sucking each other off figuratively, to the point where it might have been a little easier to stomach them if they started sucking each other off literally too. They were only 1 or 2 steps away from that anyway, especially since they're Greek deities and all that. And now, they're here to haunt you in your gacha rolls now as another permanent 5-star saber, though to be fair, they're the first one with a single target NP. So at the very least, they're quite useful as that, with both Invul and Defense Pierce built into their NP, with the added bonus of being an arts looper if you grab a support Castoria to go with your own. And in case you didn't know already, they're voiced by an actual brother and sister voiced artist duo for maximum immersion. Have Nilo from Genshin spend a summer in FGO, and this is what she turns into, a mommy in a one piece with dual swords and a switch so she can smash wherever she goes. Too bad Summer Gozen isn't as strong in FGO as Nilo is in her game. Even still, Summer Tomoe can still loop, you just gotta be a little more creative in getting her to do it, so if you can't do it for whatever reason, that is very clearly a skill issue. Tuna Man is what Rama would be like if Lozangle remembered his ass and updated its kit. Well, kind of. Rather than demonic, Fish Guy is specifically anti-Oni, though he does have a small anti-demonic buff too, along with other useful effects in his skills like Starweight buffs and Pierce Evasion, so he's basically the nightmare of any Oni trait enemy out there, especially Banana Oni, who still can't catch a damn break even 5 years later. And on the subject of Onis, we got the Big Mama Oni who's big in all the right places, if you know what I'm saying, and the most important of which is obviously her big battery, making her the first saber in the game with a fat 50%. We stand the right to ladies in this channel, by the way, and if you don't agree, you can go bitch about his art in your little Discord cabals like the fucking beta males you are. And if you're wondering where Ibuki got her baggy ass pants in her 3rd ascension, well, go play some Third Strike, and you'll see why. The most recent Santa Welfare on NA, who, to this day, I still don't quite understand why he's a saber, but to be fair, we've got a few other servers we could say that about, and FGO Christmas event lore is about as mentally stable as a Seth Zintak video. Regardless, he's supposedly a good single target quick, and I say supposedly since I've never actually used him, and he's somehow already at max bond. I wonder how that could have happened. Full Metal Demon Muramasa is finally here on NA with his own big dick 50% battery and Castoria to help him loop to the ends of the earth. He can also delete enemies out of existence with a specific anti-invul crits, but since that rarely ever happens, he's mostly just a farming saber tending to his crops as an arts memer. Before we got Muramasa, we had this guy, who's now basically the most privileged 4-star servant in the entire game, getting a whopping 4 buffs and a summer costume. 2 of those buffs, by the way, went to 1 skill, which makes it one of the only skills in the entire game to get buffed twice. And when he got that buff, he was like, "¿Por qué no los dos?" So now he can double dip into both the arts and buster metas. Oh, King of Fakers, do you have enough buffs? Zashu's also been busy, mainly showing up in the Strange Fake anime since La Zingle took their sweet fucking time with Lost Ball 7, though funnily enough the anime ended up getting delayed too, apparently. He's still chillin' as a Swiss Army knife archer though, and between his buster crits and MP that still does extra damage against almost every servant in the game, I struggle to understand why some people insist that he get another buff, since he already got one in the form of a second friggin' animation update. Robin Hood's a low-star hero who's still perfectly capable of nuking people with his poison debuff, just as well as he could 7 years ago, but he's also been expanding his portfolio over the years, starting up an investment app, serving as an operator in some pharmaceutical company, and working as a shirtless model for men's fashion magazines. Niente wants to know where you keep getting all these gold apples from, and why you're sitting on like 500 of them. When you spend half the time playing the game complaining about how you never have enough bones. She's a quick looping meme back when Scotty was meta, and is pretty damn good at it actually, one of the best in fact. Problem is, all the quick looping from back then got outsourced to the arts loopers, so she's been out of a job since, and has been looking after the kids in the Chaldea nursery in the meantime, wondering when the hell you're gonna start paying for child support. The superior Snack Twin, because fuck Steno, all my homies hate Steno. Uriel is the more accessible and budget Artemis with her own damage mod against anyone with a penis, meaning that she's the Maki to Gawain's Bina, and is the reason why he doesn't like girls with flat chests as much. Don't rely on her charm gimmick too much though, since later boss fights like the one in Lost Belt 2 feature enemies with mental debuff resist, so that you can't just cheese the ever-living shit out of them like you did in Camelot. You ever wanted to see a teddy bear twerk? Well, if you've ever gotten spooked by Orion, now you can. You've heard of the bussy, now get ready for the tussy. Orion's fat teddy bear ass aside, his waifu Artemis is the one doing the heavy lifting, and goddamn, it ain't Orion she's lifting. She snipes dudes with her bow both as a warning to Orion, as a friendly reminder of what could happen to him one day if he keeps chasing other girls around, and to practice doing that to him whenever she needs to make that reminder real. Also, it'd be really cool if someone could draw Raiden Shogun in Artemis's clothes. I'm just saying. Other than looking like a character reject from that new Fire Emblem game, David's a deadbeat dad who apparently gave no fucks about the fact that his kid tried to end the world, which could be the hot new lore for Callie and Kobo. Still, his harp skill giving the whole team one-hit evasion is never not useful, and his MP now has an anti-giant super effective mod, making him your go-to budget Spriggan farmer whenever you need more roots. If you took Shauna and made her do her best Yojo Senki impression, Nobu is about what you'd get. She's still a crit archer with a double advantage against writing and or divine servants, but La Zingle's forgotten that she exists now that her Avenger form is a thing. Being one of the first welfare servants in the game isn't exactly a status symbol now, is it? Elon Musk realized that he needed to recoup his investments after buying out Twitter, so now he's been moonlighting as a 5-star servant in FGO, while also studying how to make catgirls real, because hey, if he can now shoot lightning out of his fingertips, catgirls can't be that far behind, right? Surprisingly, for a 5-star servant that no one ever asked to be given buffs, he got 4 of them, 2 of which went into the same skill, just like for a certain red man from before. So he's got the other one of the only skills in the game to get buffed twice, just so that he can guarantee himself the buffs that he gets from his otherwise RNG second skill. Even before any of these buffs though, Tesla was kind of already like a mini Gil with his 50% battery and super effective mod against Earth or Sky enemies, but now Elon's back, baby, and the blue bird can't stop him by talking shit on him anymore. Sana's Indian brother still has that annoying ass 25% battery, but at least Appen skills are a thing now on NA2 to make it less annoying, and with Coin Sky in 5 months, he's about to nuke every Saber or Berserker he sees. That I also mentioned that his third Appen gives him bonus damage against Berserkers. Will that mean any of you will actually use him now? No, but at least the monkey vibing on his arm and his costume is cute. Kid Gil kinda wishes he had his own fuck go back button whenever he sees his older self walking around, because he's unironically a cool kid. He's a reminder to the rest of us anyway of what Gil could have been like if he didn't walk around with Grail Mud and Kid A's dick shoved up his ass all the time, which is actually a little worse in hindsight because the priest is in the damn game now. He's also one of the few Shota characters in the game, so in other words, someone you should never show to that one blue anime girl who showed up on First Take the other week. Will you ever actually use him either? Probably not, but at the very least he can be your emotional support servant whenever you're sick and tired of the word Zashu. Since Suisei insists that she's into shonen and not shota, here's a more fitting character for her. The best part about Billy is his Final Ascension art because it has no reason to go that hard. Put it on a shirt and pretty soon you'll find it on that one Twitter account about shirts that go hard or something. Like Gawain, Triscuits can also be considered the higher rarity version of a 3-star servant, namely David, since they're both single-target archers with a Harp of Healing skill, the one that gives the team-wide evade. But because we all know that Lozengal hates free-to-play servants since they don't make them any money, Tristan gets an MP buff that lets him ignore defense and a buff to his Harp skill that now removes party debuffs, which also works for his second skill and its annoying-ass MP seal Demerit. Combine these with the 50% battery and buff removal effect that he already had, and Tristan can now go in raw on anyone who doesn't have a buff removal resist effect. Filthy Frank is a man who always washes his rice after he's done smashing his enemies to a pulp with it first. He's got an anti-demonic mod on his AoE MP, making him a budget demonic enemy farmer and very useful considering how many demonic enemies there are that drop mats you'll eventually need. Anne and Mary broke out of that one Senran Kagura game and ended up here somehow, and this is their summer form to go with their Rider class. Thankfully, Anne's the one who shows up here in their sprite and not Mary, otherwise we would have had the Twitter police on our ass for showing a lolly in a swimsuit. Good thing they don't know about a certain other summer archer that we need to talk about later. But hey, for now, we don't need to worry about it since Archer Anne and Mary's a summer fucking 1 servant, so good luck ever seeing them ever again. And speaking of another Summer 1 servant, we have Squirtle, Squirtoria, Squirt, whatever variation of that you want to call her. She was already a meme with how easily she could refund her own MP, but now with Castoria's inclusion into FGO, it's like if Archuria used that one clone yourself ability from Elden Ring, and then speedran the entire game with it, because you're gonna be seeing her MP gauge start blasting off to the moon so fast that people are gonna try to come in and make a new crypto out of it. Yes, the danger lolly, and VTubers these days think that they're supposed to be the walking, talking manifestations of instant social media demonetization. Let me tell ya, they ain't got shit on this fictional anime grade schooler. Just don't ask me why mine is grailed. Chloe is yet another example of a 4-star archer who's basically the higher rarity version of a 3-star archer before her, Billy in her case, but unlike Billy, she's actually good, mainly because, well, she's not quick. Everyone's favorite useless goddess, not named Aqua, and the first Rin face of the game, because at this point it's common knowledge that Saber faces, Rin faces, and Sakura faces are guaranteed moneymakers, so why wouldn't you add them into the game? Now imagine the horror if Takeuchi drew all of them. Useless goddess is a bit of a misnomer though here in FGO, because Ishtar here is one of the best, if not the best farming archer in the game, who somehow continues to find relevance even in a farming meta dominated by blue cards. It certainly helps that Lozengal, for some reason, felt that it was necessary to give her an NP buff of all things. Venus drops go burr. This is the guy I told you to keep Saberfran around for, just in case he starts plotting another conspiracy, tries to establish another criminal underworld, or attempts to shoot the Earth because he thinks it'll be the greatest crime ever committed in history or something. You know, just your most average British guy at work here. At least he's a pretty cool bartender as a side gig. He's so evil, in fact, that his second skill buff makes him turn his allies evil too, so that his evil charisma skill can work on them. So, like, imagine MASH committing the absolutely unacceptable crime of littering or something. And remember how he's always wanted a younger version of himself in the game to compete with Holmes? Well, he's here now. Too bad he looks like a fucking clown. Will I still get cancelled for calling Demia Michael Jackson in 2023? Well, I mean, shit, Pikame got cancelled for wanting to play that Hogwarts game, so yes, I think I will be. But before I get cancelled, Demia is a surprisingly strong single-target arts archer. In fact, he and Chloe have very similar kits, so the two of them probably get along in their own weird way. Fun fact, he judges regular Emiya the same way that regular Emiya judges Shiro, so now that we have Muramasa, you ever wonder if they all just kind of sit in the same room together silently judging each other? Our resident babushka has gotten too powerful and gotten herself a goddamn some Nyarf minigun, original patent by the way, all rights reserved, from God knows where while also running around doing her best Kill la Kill impression. Where the fuck are Tesla and Edison when you need them? She's an arts AoE, but I'll be honest with you guys, I don't even know if she loops properly with double Castoria or not. All I'll say is that her party 20% battery is actually pretty nice, especially now that we have early appends, so she's surprisingly not bad, and you'll find use for her in your non-looping farming teams as long as Nerf doesn't track you down to give you a cease and desist order. I apologize for the doxing ahead of time, but believe it or not, this is what Ayame was before she became a VTuber, so in case you've ever wondered why Ayame loves playing Apex, it's because she was an archer and not a saber. And now that I've revealed this sensitive information, expect me to be on False Eyes and Kill's channels within the next 12 hours with the most obvious clickbait thumbnails you've ever seen. She's a single target buster nuke without a buster buff, so make sure to give her one for maximum yeeting effectiveness. Also make sure to stock up on Nakirium whenever you can, since you never know when she's gonna stream next. Do Martians celebrate Christmas? Doesn't matter, cause this one does, and that's all that really matters. Why is she a Santa, though? With the power of push pops and Watame's headbangs, Santa Attila is somehow one of the better welfares we have in this game, though to be fair, that's just a perk you get for being an archer welfare, unless your name is Nobu. Shinano looks a little more evil in this game than she does in Azure Lane, but don't worry, she can just sleep that off, I'm sure. In the meantime, she goes all elfin lead on bitches and gets an NP buff that gives her an extra super effective mod against super large enemies, so she and Proto-Arthur can run around slaughtering them together on the most romantic murder date you'll ever see. Just don't miss out on the next rate up if that already hasn't passed on NA, that is. I think I used this joke already, but Chiron got rejected from Uma Musume because he has a dick, but for some of you that's not a problem. You can run 2 of this guy to give your third teammate on the field 30 crit stars, 60% projection, and 100% crit damage, and his MP buff gives him an extra super effective mod against earth enemies, so he can fuck them even harder. Just keep him away from any thirsty VTubers out there who like talking about horsecock. Giga Chad Napoleon is probably the single most flattering representation of French people in any type of media ever, and with a hat bigger than his torso that would make the Toho girls proud, and a howitzer that's bigger than his entire body that he carries himself because he
work with his hands like an alpha male.
Like Tesla, Napoleon Dynamite is a miniature version of Gil with his own 30% battery and anti-divine super effective mod, and he's a permanent 5-star, so you can actually get him, unlike Tesla or Gil. Also make sure Neapolitan isn't locked in a room alone with Russian servants, otherwise they're gonna eat him alive for trying to invade Russia that one time. Jarcher binged all the seasons and movies of Madoka Magica and now can't stop spouting Meguka memes. Also, her taste in magical girl costumes is, weird. When she's not trying to cosplay magical girls, though, she's an AoE arts looper who weaponizes people like me to waterboard her enemies. And her best ascension is her second because that high ponytail and One Piece combo together is god tier, don't at me. Super Appleman is a single target arts archer whenever he's not making more Mume animations, and uses the apples from I Wanna Be the Guy as ammo. Other than being a budget arts crit archer, he has a first skill that pops 30 crit stars, which means that a 3-star archer has a better star bomb skill than most gold servants. Yes, this guy. I highly recommend bringing some earplugs if you plan on using Indian Hot Wheels for extended periods of time, unless you like getting your eardrums blown out that way. He's a single target buster archer with skills that both weaken his target and buffs his crit damage progressively over time, so he's meant to snowball his damage the more he uses his normals. Just don't be surprised if he somehow shows up in the next Yakuza game. Watame doesn't even play FGO, and yet somehow she's in the game twice already. And yes, I bring Watame up again because I care more about her than I do about Paris. He's like William Tell and Chiron, where he also has some kind of anti-defensive mechanic associated with the single target MP. And yes, he's a guy, which means that he's also a Shota, so you know what that means. Also, daily remind that he's Yuzu's favorite city in regards to architecture. Summer Baddie said fuck her deadline, she's gonna go binge on FPS Battle Royales instead, and then changed into a swimsuit because clearly you needed to play shooters. Not that I'm complaining. She's got that annoying ass caster deck with the Buster MP, but at least her color buff on her third skill applies to both her Buster and Arts cards. Now that she's a VTuber too, expect her to show up on Ollie's or Amelie's Apex streams at some point, possibly even both at the same time. Spishtar's partner in crime and FGO's token cheerleader archetype. I mean, we have an FPS gamer in a swimsuit, a Santa who looks like this, a useless goddess, and a pirate who can somehow ricochet bullets off invisible walls. A cheerleader should be the least of your concerns. She's a single target quick, which might surprise some of you since her MP looks like it would be AoE, but for some reason she felt the need to pull a Modern Warfare 3 when Infinity Ward hasn't even put out the remake for that yet. But of course they'd give Nightingale a nurse outfit. This wouldn't be a Japanese game if they didn't. But don't let it distract you too much from the fact that she's got both a charisma and targetable MP damage buff as a welfare servant, and with an AoE MP of her own, she's quite the useful solo wave clear to have. Remember the torquing teddy bear that I talked about at the beginning of this section? This is him now, this absolute fucking unit. You feel old yet? His reputation precedes him, I'm sure. Buster crits that don't give a flying fat shit about class disadvantage and a 0% body fat physique. Like, I know I called Napoleon earlier a Giga Chad, but you don't get much more Giga Chad than this. That being said, watching Artemis choke him the fuck out will never not be funny. FGO's resident zoomer, despite the fact that she's from 11th century Japan or something. She's best friends with Bae and is a walking advertisement for you go play Fire Emblem Engage, but to this day I still don't get why the fuck she's an archer. Try to talk about Ilya Summer without making a lolly joke challenge. Impossible. Just another AoE wave clear. I don't know if she can loop with double Scotty, but really, who cares? Like, not only do you have Nanta for that shit, but Scotty's also vacationing off in the Maldives anyway right now. She'll be back in about a year and a half with her own swimsuit or something. Her second skill specifically works on Lolly, 2 if for whatever reason you really needed to know that. Nobu's degenerate simp of a brother who watched too much Tokyo Ghoul and has the same nudist tendencies as Nobu basically exists just to buff her, and then Thanos snaps himself with his own MP. So in other words, you're never using him at all. His one saving grace that better justifies his existence is the fact that you can farm servant coins off his ass the next time he comes back in Gouda 5 rerun to fuel a couple grails from grail casting, which unironically is pretty nice. And just like how we had to start the Sabers off with Saba, we gotta start the Lancers with Lanza. Sorry, Faker. You probably grew up watching Ku solos on Hanako's channel over the years because he's a natural solo servant and one of the best anchor servants in the game just because he won't freaking die. So if you're coming in here only watching the animes, you're probably extremely confused right about now. Throw in an MP buff that comes with an evasion pierce and an attack buff that scales with how much health he's lost, a triple append and level 120, and you might as well just start calling him Grand Lancer from now on. Coco's distant relative's main perk is her double charisma that applies to all the cute anime girls in the game. Just don't ask me how it interacts with servants like Astolfo, which, by the way, I imagine is kinda like listening to double audio of yourself. Throw in her buffed second skill that comes with a defense debuff and some other utility, and you got a decent plug suit support for your favorite waifus. The reason why Benkei has a third skill called Blank Subscription List is because that's how many people still remember he exists in 2023. You can actually do some big brain stuff with him though, which is really weird to say out loud, admittedly, because now with this MP buff that removes all enemy buffs, which is something only one other servant in the game can do, he can now act as a low-cost utility meat shield, which is a lot more than what we can say about him before. The second of the Ku Musketeers, Proto-Ku, isn't as famous as the OG, but he has his own MP buff and the same exact evasion skill, so he's not bad. His main thing is that he has a strong power mod against wild beast enemies, so he'll at least be useful early on killing chimeras whenever you need to farm talents from them. Leo Whitefang, but Spartan. He is, in fact, the boss of this gym by holding down the fort with his taunts and support buffs, which means that ironically or fittingly, depending on how you look at it, he's best used with a big brain setup in mind, preferably while also having the main Halo theme play in the background. Solaire's homie in another universe if you replace the sun with Rome, that is. He's a good budget farming lancer with decent support, but he mainly exists to give you the ability to aggressively T-pose at your enemies to assert maximum dominance. Eric Bana is an AoE buster lancer, and the only thing that's notable about him is his buffed first skill that now has a 3-turn MP damage buff. Yippee! Other than that, Lazangle somehow expects us to believe that he and this little prick are supposed to be brothers. Goddamn, Year of the Bunny, am I right? Unfortunately, her bunny costume's the only reason to have her nowadays. I mean, if no one's using Scotty anymore, what chance did she have? She still has her Omega nuke damage against divine or undead enemies, especially if you make your own Spider-Man beam with the 3 Skahas, so that's nice on like the one time that it becomes relevant in the next 2 years. The original John Deere tractor, covered in shit and mud that is, just don't show him to the Russians in Ukraine right now. They might get a little scared just looking at him. Surprisingly, Lazangle didn't forget that this guy exists and gave him not just 1 but 2 2 whole buffs, 2 more than what anyone was expecting. Too bad people just keep using Ku anyway. Lalter's most prominent role is to be Salter's emotional support buddy in the Charisma E Club. In fact, Salter and Lalter are basically BFFs. They're both alt versions of the same servant, they're both busters, and they both hit way harder than you'd expect with their NPs. There's just one place where they differ in a big way. Guess what that is? The guy Arjuna keeps screaming about in his sleep when he thinks he's alone at night because of how badly he got wrecked by him in Lost Ball 4. No, really, that fight was easy as fuck, just 3-turn him, forehead. Just like Arjuna, though, Karna got cursed with a 25% battery that still to this day hasn't been changed, but then again, the addition of appends makes it a little more tolerable. He still nukes the crap out of divine enemies with its Giga Chad bonus damage against them, as opposed to the Virgin Insta-kill meme, or whatever the fuck Arjuna's got, so clearly we know who the better curry boy is. Finn the Lancer, I guess? Which would make Deer Mud Jake. I've never watched Adventure Time, so I don't know if that makes any sense or not. Nobody likes this guy, but if we're all being honest with ourselves here, privately, in the middle of the night, with the door locked while under the covers, we'll admit he's a pretty damn good looping lancer with his own MP gen buff, a 30% battery, and the fact that he's permanent, which means that you'll probably get a couple copies of him eventually. So, while your first reaction upon getting spooked by him might be to go immediately to the burn tab, remember that he's a great arts looping lancer if you don't have a penguin on stilts. Zigguard's waifu, who was in the game for like 2 or 3 years before him, which must have sucked until you realize there's someone else out there who's still waiting for their waifu to show up in the game. She's your resident kleptomaniac, but she steals your own servants to try to drag their asses off to Valhalla, where Jill's waiting to change their lives with a drink or something. She's still a good crit support with her targetable star weight buff, and she's now got her own 30% battery to shove her spear down someone's throat with, particularly the very same people she wants to drag off. Dynasty Warrior's Reject is an arts crit lancer whose skills mainly limit him to blowing his load all in one turn if he can help it, but he also has the issue of not being able to generate his own crit stars minus the 15 from his buffed third skill. Thankfully, now he's got Proto Merlin on JP to help him with his endurance a little bit at least. My personal favorite version of Seba. You couldn't imagine why that would be now, huh? She's still a monster of a farming lancer to this day, though an MP buff sure would be nice, especially now that Airshigul's gotten one. Lazingle did at least update her animations and gave her a buff to her first skill so that now she's got additional power mods against chaotic and or evil, so I like to imagine that Benny Enma must have taught her that during lunch break or something. Remember to always wear protection whenever you're Netflix and chillin' with Tama Lancer. No, not that kind, because if you don't, she's gonna blow your dick off, however you want to interpret that, and deal super effective damage to you. So she's the worst nightmare for any male archer or berserker out there, especially berserkers, because guess what her third append is? And her third skill buff is an actual fucking godsend, because it gets rid of her shitty self-stun and replaces it with a 30% battery so she can commit testicular manslaughter even better. Now, look at these 2 pictures for me and tell me what the difference is. Speaking of Dragon Lancers, here's another one, except she's not as big, she's a Yandere and she's a single target. She's mostly a trophy servant nowadays because she came out all the way back in Summer 1, and because we have another Yandere single target buster waifu who does her job better, and they're in the same Chaldea Stalkers club together, so in case Raiko bullies her a little too hard, make sure to have Liz nearby to comfort her, even if Liz doesn't want to. I'm kinda sick and tired of calling Lancer Vlad Sad Vlad, so from now on I'm gonna try to start calling him Doomslayer Vlad instead. He's also a support tank Lancer whose game plan is to go up against any evil, archer, berserker, or even avenger enemy, taunt them to lower their defense, pop his buffed second skill that now gives his team a double NP damage and buster buff, and shove a couple pointy sticks up their ass. Small Jalter is just another buster wave clear, but to be fair, if you have her, she's welfare, so that means she's MP5, or at least she should be. And for some reason, she's got the same level of mana burst as Lalter, so she'll hit harder than you might expect. Just don't take a closer look at what she's wearing, and keep her off Twitter, and you'll be fine. Unless you don't have her at all, in which case, you had nothing to worry about in the first place. Gil's boyfriend and favorite Clay Bussy, though it looks like the two of them have some sexual tension between them right now, judging from the strange fake trailer. He's a 5-star coup in the fact that he's also another solo specialist, but on fucking crack. He already had the strongest single target Lancer damage in the game, but then La Zingel gave him another 50% battery on top of that because he totally needed that. And then we have Sneck Lily, who despite also getting 3 buffs like Enkidu, is almost no better than what she started out as, and she's still getting bullied by the twins. For the last time, do not step on the Sneck. Kotaka holds the distinction of being the very last free story lock 3-star that you got in FGO. Do you feel old yet? It is nice that the game does give you a free single target Lancer. The only problem is that she's story locked, so have fun rolling story. I mean, you rolled it for Gawain earlier, so what's the worst that could happen? The other more useful summer Yandere Lancer that I was talking about a bit ago, and it's not just because she has bigger tits. Lots of servants have 1 damage support buff, but Raiko Lancer, on the other hand, is one of the uncommon ones, especially as a 4-star, to have 2, a charisma and a buster buff, and that buster buff also comes with a debuff removal and is targetable, a great option to have if you're trying to farm a raid and the raid boss keeps putting annoying ass debuffs on your DPS, which includes Raiko herself, of course. Now that NA's got Muramasa, FGO NA can now be referred to from now on as the official English translation of Fate Stay Night, and if Nasu doesn't do it himself in the next year and a half, it'll also become the official English translation of Suki Remake. Pravati's one of the 2 premier 4-star quick loopers in the Lancer class. Now you just gotta look for a Scotty somewhere in your support slots, which actually, to be fair, now that NA's got early triple supports, you might actually have a chance of finding now. Moon made so many jokes about becoming a Japanese man that he actually is one in this game, and he's still bald as fuck. He's also another solo Lancer. What is with the Lancers and having this many soloers? His Stargen and crits go burr, but not for long since, well, his name isn't Ku. Nuked is a Buster Wave Clear with both an MP damage buff and a new anti-demonic power mod, adding her to the growing list of AoE servants who beat the crap out of demonic enemies. And she's permanent, so she'll probably rack up a couple MP levels for herself. Simple and effective, just like how she is in character. I just kinda wish we had her corrupted skin too, if JP doesn't have it yet at this point. No, Ereshkigal doesn't have a summer version yet, but she does get a Gyaru costume, or whatever that's supposed to be, in Lost Belt 7, so take these dubs wherever you can, Eresh fans. The other big dub that she got earlier than that is her MP damage buff, which was a surprise, but a welcome one, that also gives her a super effective mod against Earth enemies. Now give Lartoria her MP buff too, goddammit. Whenever Bryn tries to yoink people away to Valhalla, the Valkyries are her partners in crime, especially now that Scotty's enjoying her retirement and they had to go look for another job since. They're the other quick looping Lancer with Parvati that I mentioned, and because it's 3 of them in one servant, each ascension is actually a different Valkyrie, so pick your favorite one, which is Ortland. Banana Oni became Banana Strawberry Cotton Candy when she got a summer class, if her hair is any indication. She's another single target Buster Lancer with yet another anti-Berserker Appen, so that way she can give herself even more trauma. Chun-Li with a spear and an install ult, basically the 4-star Arts version of Baldi from earlier with boobs, and she works even better with Arts crit support, so you know what that means. Ass. That is all. No, wait, I lied. She's got titties too. But let's be honest, you mostly use her for her NP. You also use this girl for her MP too, since single target and she's welfare, so she's MP5 if you have her. Uesugi Kenshin sure is popular, huh? First she was in Sengoku Rants, then in AU Senki, and now in FGO. She also kinda looks like the main girl from Samurai Vandalism too, if you squint hard enough, though that could just be me. And if you don't know what Samurai Vandalism is, don't worry about it. Gary somehow found a big-ass spear and shield in SpongeBob's closet that he didn't know about, and now he's a cute anime wolf girl with a single target Buster MP that comes with its own Invul Pierce, which is quite notable actually for someone who's only a 2-star. I just hope that nothing bad happens to her in Lost Belt 6 that NA's gonna get later this year. Surely she'll be okay by the end of it, right? Alix is who you use if you hate Theon's guts for spooking you too damn much, since other than him, she's the premier 4-star Arts Looper with Castoria. Also, she and Saber Maeve are gonna go to war someday over who gets to have the penguin motif as a summer servant, since there can only be one! Now that we beat the shit out of Wodime and Beryl finished the job for us, we NTR'd Canis away from him, and now she's another Buster AoE Lancer who mainly just stands around yelling at people and eats the croissants that Gordolf bakes, because what else is he useful for? You've met Roma, now here's Giga Chad Roma, and he's had enough of you and your stupid Dark Souls jokes. He wants Armored Core memes instead. He's the playable version of that one Skahafest challenge quest where the more stacks of Rome there are on the field when when he uses MP, the more damage his MP does, so keep track of where you use his charisma. Edisa is a welfare AoE arts lancer, which sounds too good to be true, and it is, because her MP has insta-kill and it ruins her refunding. Still, she gets a free power mod against servants, so she can still come in handy whenever you need it. And what do you mean she's only 14 years old? It doesn't say that anywhere, right guys? Speaking of another welfare lancer, we have the actual bestiality enjoyer in a swimsuit who now pole dances with her spear because clearly she didn't have enough innuendos already. I'm sure she'd be great friends with Bao. She has her own ball-busting super effective mod against guys that Tama Lancer first had, and since she's MP5, if you have her, she's the better option strictly in terms of damage if you either only have Tama Lancer MP1 or you don't have the Fox Lancer at all. You've heard of the Curry boys, now here's a Curry gal, and she's a 5-star arts looper who will come in very handy once NA gets the Tunguska raids at the end of the year. God damn, Gyaru girls are so fucking hot, bro. The undisputed best SNEC and peak FSN character design, too bad Lazango can't see that and is missing out on free money year after year for not making a Summer Medusa design. She's an AoE quick rider, good as a budget wave clear, but doesn't do much else since she's a year 1 servant, so what did you expect? Siegfried's and Sigurd's BFF, and together they go frolicking through the countryside, slaughtering all the dragons in sight. He's also the best taunt in the game because his taunt skill is his default at level 1 and lasts for 3 turns, so he's a fan favorite of soloers around the world until his cards all show up on the first turn. Lazango did the most famous pirate in history dirty by turning him into a degenerate fucking weeb, but hey, at least he's one of us now. In case you haven't had enough of budget rider wave clears, he's yet another one, and he's even more of a budget wave clear because he's a 2-star. Speaking of mommy characters, Boudica actually is a mommy. She's got quite a diverse set of buffs, party crit damage, arts, defense, and attack buffs, along with a targetable guts, which sound really nice together until you realize Tamamo exists, so the fact that they're both voiced by Saito Chiwa is kind of funny. At least all the Rule 34 people have made of her is nice, since that's more than what I can say about a lot of other servants in the game. Hey look, it's that one sword girl from Type Lumina, and in case you've never noticed this before, you can see her ass in her final ascension. Don't ask me why I felt the need to tell you that. Ushi's a budget single target rider, but with all of her buffs, she's a budget single target rider who hits like a gold servant with an obsession with collecting decapitated human heads because she's been playing too much Dead Space Remake. Iskander's shonen version, so if you hear Stella playing in the background, don't panic, it's not Arash blowing himself up again. He's a budget quick support, and he's got an AoE quick MP of his own, so he's good as a budget wave clear, or in other words, he's the better version of Medusa. Sorry, Medusa. Straight Outta Paris is another AoE wave clear. She's quick, and she can surprisingly loop with Scotty, especially once she gets her charisma buff, so you can imagine how many people actually use her nowadays. Hideshan's still waiting for her Avenger version to show up, but to be fair, I'm waiting for Avenger Boudica myself, so where the fuck are they, Lazangle? Honorary member of the Dragon Bullies Club, despite not actually having an anti-dragon perk, at least not in-game. Best used as a plug suit utility servant since she has a party debuff clear and a buff removal and defense debuff for one enemy. She does have a buffed AoE buster NP, but the only problem is that her attack stat is one of the lowest for 4-star servants. It's still an option if you need it though. She's still wondering why there are 2 DC characters who keep calling her mommy. Adding to the list of celebrities who moonlight as FGO servants is Drake, a 5-star buster AoE farming rider who truly is suffering from success with an MP buff and a second skill buff that gives her not just her own buster buff but also a 3-turn defense pierce to go with a 3-turn invul pierce that she's always had. All she needs now is Coin Sky in 5 months and you can thank her later. The Yuri Pirates' original rider form with Mary representing them. They're the first servant to have an MP that scales with their HP, so the lower it is, the more damage they do. They're also a crit rider, no surprise here, so they can do a lot of damage if all the stars align, except that's never gonna happen because no one knows who they are until they show up in their gacha rolls. KFC's unofficial mascot in Japan, except she's the reason why there's always a goddamn waiting list for Chris's fried chicken because she keeps eating it all. A free MP5 AoE buster wave clear, which was great back in the day, but just like fried chicken, didn't really age well over the years. And in case Pocket Shock ever wants to talk her shit about skill issues, just remember that I have 2 copies of Santa Alter and she doesn't. The Trap Master, and I'm not talking about the Arc Knight subclass. Unlike his Saber class, Ryder Astolfo's kit is a complete train wreck, but hilariously, his 50% battery and MP buff make him one of the better 4-star wave clears. Even funnier is the fact that you don't actually need to lower his battery because his MP is quick, so he'll refund himself up to 49%, assuming you have Super Scope of course, and a support Scotty can top him off, or Castoria rather, since Scotty is rather busy hanging out with Suitor eating ice cream on the beach. Nasu's personal FGO waifu, Celtic Super Bitch, somehow also got the Nero treatment by getting 2 costumes, and just like Nero, her second one is way better. But unlike Nero, she also got a 4-of-a-kind with buffs to every part of her kit and is actually good. Her calling card, Inverse of Liz, is her double charisma for the boys, so combine that with a 30% battery for them and a 30% defense debuff, and she's a loaded support for your favorite husbandos. She's also the Tama Lancer of the Rider class with super effective damage against dudes, so a lot of reasons to bust her out for a fight, if her Lost Belt 6 stance wasn't a good enough reason for you to do so already. Alexander, when he finally becomes great, except the only thing great about him in FGO is his damage with the kind of skills he's got. It's not that that's bad, especially not when he's got one of the highest AoE Rider damages in the game, it's just that he doesn't have a battery to really take advantage of them. He's just one good battery buff away from greatness if, again, Lazango decides to remember that he exists. Oh, and speaking of another Rider that the devs forgot is in the game, here's Kentucky Rider, the guy that scared Lazango into not putting out another single target 4-star Rider for the next 2 years after him because of how much of a damn Giga Chad he is, and we're not even talking about his Berserker class yet. He's essentially Okta if she were a 4-star Rider in terms of performance, and hilariously, his third append is also anti-Berserker in case you have no one better. Too bad you can't unlock it because he's welfare and 80% of you watching this right now don't even have him. Before he took up rock and roll as a career, Ozzy Osbourne was an Egyptian pharaoh who hung out with Gilgamesh as drinking buddies just to see who could laugh more obnoxiously. Fittingly, he also has his Imperial Privilege, but unlike every other Imperial Privilege user, he has a way to guarantee all his buffs with his third skill. And with his MP buff, he now has the highest MP damage for a permanent single target Rider. Summer Mordred is what happens when she gets the college spring break vibe and goes to California for a surfing vacation while stealing one of her dad's surfboards, thinking she won't find out until she gets to Venice Beach and finds Squirtle waiting for her there with a water gun with Excalibur in it. She's the very first arts looper in the game, so she can call herself a hipster since she's been arts looping before it was cool. Yelan doesn't have her Aetherlight in this game, but she will Izuna drop you into the core of the earth with her single target Buster MP. She's also a Buster crit Rider, and her charisma buff gives her instant stars to work with so she can crit whenever she's got the cards for it, or you can use the 30% battery for some setups along with her second append. The guy who found the Americas thinking it was like India or something. How photogenic. If you can get past his historically accurate obsession for slavery and his rough art style, Columbus is actually a pretty decent farming Rider with his own 30% battery. Too bad he's story locked, but to most of you, nothing of value was lost anyway. Colt 45 is straight out of a Bond movie, shooting while standing on her dope-ass bike, except instead of a Colt, it's a Dragunov. Her claim to fame, other than being Salter in a skimpy-ass maid outfit, is her OG reload meme before Koyenskaya stole that from her, that, at max level, can be used twice if Malter also uses her second skill on herself, which lets her do some dank single-target quick damage, and that's before you throw Scotty in there too. Rishtar's got some riz of her own with how many simps she's got, especially over at Lazangle. She's another welfare AoE Rider, but her first skill is a great damage support buff to the point where esports Rider Ishtars are a thing. She can also Scotty loop if you try hard enough, but imagine quick looping in 2023. Vladimir Putin, Ivan the Terrible, is yet another Buster AoE wave clear, but the two buffs he's got elevate him up there with Iskander since they give him an anti-lawful or chaotic power mod, a 30% battery, and an MP damage buff. He also has an AoE buff removal, which I totally forgot he had back when I was talking about Benkei. Brad Pitt is a quick looping Rider, which is another sentence I never expected myself to say in my life ever, but here we are. Since Scotty looping is so 2018 though, he's since switched careers to become a Pokemon trainer or a Digimon trainer or whatever your favorite Mon is, until Nintendo comes in with a cease and desist order of their own, that is. Paco must be a fan of Metal Slug since Ryoma's doing his best Tarma impression in his Final Ascension art. He's a single target arts Rider, the very first one in the game in fact, so always remember that it took Lazangle over 2 whole years to do that. Personally though, his dragon waifu is the reason most of us are here, and for me it's mainly because she sounds a little familiar. Gurako's favorite servant from Grand Phantasm, so she'll be able to connect with Consort Yu in in a way that no one else can, that's for sure. Other than being a talking horse who thinks he's Lu Bu, he's just another wave clear who's race buddies with Shangyu on the weekends. Itsuki, but with the power of Mercury and girl bossing. Like Boudica, she's a support rider, but unlike Boudica, she's actually used since the ability to give 2 servants 30% charge is pretty good. You know what's also good? Charisma of Hope. Guess who has that? After Kide fisted her a little too hard, Da Vinci became small and lost her driver's license since her idea of assisting operations is running people over with a shadow border, repeatedly since she's an AoE arts looper just like Summer Mordred, and Castoria is her favorite driving partner because of course she would be. Bart borrowed that MASH figure that Blackbeard has in his Final Ascension art and still hasn't given it back, and he'll be best buddies with you if you also have a fetish for girls who have one eye covered. He's got a super effective mod against bronze enemies with an AoE MP, so in other words, great against other pieces of trash like him. Liz might be able to run around with all sorts of weird Halloween versions of herself, but Carmilla's the one with the swimsuit alt, and that's the one dub she cares about having. She's also got a bad case of road rage, just like Lolly Vinci, except nowhere near as bad, because you're probably not going to be quick looping with Summer Carmilla anytime soon. My friendo is Fubuki's favorite servant, except in Mandracardo's case, he actually just wants some damn friends. He also has Bochi issues of his own, which leaks into his kit by giving him some annoying self-debuffs, which makes him the most relatable servant in the game, but being relatable isn't what farms mats for us, so stick to using Ushi or something. Iris's mom in Another Universe is a big fan of mecha, so much so that her NP is one, and he punches you so hard you explode. She has a solid kit, but her biggest problem is the fact that Drake exists, and even though I called her Iris's mom just now, she's a relatively rare example of a hot anime gilf if you're into that. And since Lost Belt Olympians all seem to be giant mecha enthusiasts, Odysseus has his own too, and together with Europa they hold giant mecha battles for the kids over at the Chaldea Nursery to watch whenever they get bored. He's also another arts AoE writer, a permanent one too at that, so you can arts loop with him if you don't have either of the other two. And, for the record, he's Pocket Chalk's worst nightmare. Raita coming in hot with another absolute banger, man. Just can't stop catching dubs out here, bruh. The more surprising part is that Lazengal actually gave Summer Murasaki an MP damage buff, which gives her an extra super effective mod against earth enemies, so try to keep an eye out on the kind of single target caster enemies you'll be facing, just like how Shion's gonna keep an eye on Murasaki and wishing she were just as big. And we finally found Nemo, and turns out he's a 5-star single-target arts rider who shoves his ship's long shaft up someone's ass and calls that his noble phantasm. His kit is pretty limited if he's not on a water side or void stage, so his biggest buff would be a way for him to force it on his own, but he also has a super effective mod against super large enemies, which means he's basically Proto-Arthur's and Fujino's Uber driver. Everyone talks about how Medusa should get a swimsuit alt, but only a few people talk about how Medea should get one too. Seeing that I have a Grailed Lily myself, I'm not opposed to this, and I will laugh if this happens before Ereshkigal Summer does. She took a pointer from Rin from that one time they fought in FSN and decided to use Rule Breaker a little more often in FGO. A little too often, to the point where you might think she's from London with how much she stabs people. Gilda Ray, after way too many bourbons and too much bad parasocial fanfic writing about a big titty blonde girl who saved France, at least according to Nasu. Truly, this is what no pussy does to a motherfucker. Like Benkei from before, with his buffs, he can now be used in some specific setups, specifically with foreigners or as an assassin wave clear, which sounds okay until you realize he's story locked. The waiver of low star general supports, Hans has had enough of both Yor and Kiara's shit and just wants to ride in peace. He's also wondering when the hell Lazengal will give him a second MP buff to make all of his MP effects guaranteed, because what the actual fuck were they smoking when they did that? I can't even make a joke about this guy because I couldn't give more of a shit about him, other than maybe a meme about him stealing other people's work like he's an AI art dev. He's a low-cost buster support, which is nice when party cost is an issue, but imagine being a buster support in the same year that this bitch comes out. Mephistopheles wandered into FGO, somehow got stuck in a clown outfit, and chucks bombs and calls that magic. Fittingly, he's got a few tricks up his sleeve, such as a 3-time buff block, a 50% reduction in healing if for whatever reason you need that, and an MP that ignores defense, which which is quite nifty on a 3-star. So you can get creative with him if you feel like doing a little trolling in some challenge quests from time to time. There is no meme here. Mozart is a low star Giga Chad, 64% party arts buff, 20% AoE crit chance debuff, and the only skill in the game to give an instant 50 stars. It doesn't get much better than this as a free-to-play servant. Lo and behold, the original overworked servant. It's been pretty cathartic for him watching Scotty and now Castoria suffer for the past 2.5 years, that's for sure. Not that it's made him any worse, so you still might find yourself pulling him out of retirement occasionally because his kit is just that good still. And annual reminder that while most meta caster supports are limited, Waver is not, so he's still going to get overworked by new players. I could call Ku Caster Buff Pup with just how buffed he is now. Who knew that giving him an 80% battery would let him reload meme his way into relevance? I wonder how that could happen. I said before with Mozart that it didn't get much better with him, but this guy is one of the ones who is. The very first welfare servant in the game, I would say that no one remembers her, but JP did that whole Halloween omnibus event thing, so it's nice that people were at least able to get her again. Now, if only they did that with some other old events. Gee, that would sure be nice, huh? Tamamo, the original broken art support. To this day, no one else has a skill reduction effect on a support arts NP like hers does, which makes her the backbone of arts teams throughout the history of the game. Her imposter's gonna show up in 4 months to take over the Buster meta, which means that there's only one more color type left. And for the record, no, she doesn't need a buff, no, she doesn't need charge, and no, Castoria never replaced her, and if you think she did, please kindly stop playing FGO and go start playing Genshin instead, because that's a more suitable game for you with the kind of community they've got. Medea, before she got a lead role in the movie Knives Out, when the only one she's interested in shanking is Jason. She hyper-specializes in healing, which unfortunately doesn't work out for her since killing all your enemies is a faster way of keeping your own team safe. She does have a debuff clear on her NP, and one of her buffs gives her a targetable 3-turn buff removal resist, which could come in handy, but she'll be more known for being one of the only servants in the game who could solo the big Kiara fight back in CCC. Cursory Rhyme looks up as many diss tracks as she can whenever Raiko isn't looking, just so that she can cuss out Shutendoji for shanking her back in Heian kill. Though to be fair, Raiko would probably let her do that anyway. She's the game's first crit caster with a 40% battery and AoE MP, so she's a useful wave clear against assassins until you can get your hands on better AoE casters. Paris is a rare example of a free-to-play character power creeping a 5-star in FGO. Turns out, giving Nero Bright a buff after one of her raid ups wasn't exactly a big brain move on Lozengel's part. His third skill buff that gives a 50% MP gen buff is crucial in his role as a free-to-play arts looping support, so this is the guy you turn to if you don't have Castoria yet. Cabbage escaped from the future Soviet Union and ended up here with the power of Steampunk, where he's another AoE caster and turns into a weird race car looking thing whenever Fran and Moriarty watch Redline and then want to go out racing or something. It's the Lolly Granny again, but in her original caster class. If Hans is the waiver of low-star general supports, then Helena is the waiver of the 4-star supports, with her party 20% charge and triple color buff. She even has her own AoE MP in case she needs to handle things herself, because the most powerful Slavic weapon is a pissed-off babushka. The last of the America trio, Thomas Edison, is what Trump wishes he could be, which is yet another thing I never thought I'd say, even though that's probably an inaccurate statement, but I don't care because it sounds funny. He's an alternative plug suit support with a targetable CDR and MP overcharge buff, and his second skill is loaded with a 5-turn star regen, party MP regen, and party MP damage buff. Just don't look at its cooldown. If you've been wondering where Ilya's mom's been off to these days, she's in that Genshin game colony dropping the fuck out of random sea monsters. I'm sure she'll be back someday, and when she is, she's another healing caster whose calling card is her party guts. Very useful for that one challenge quest where King Hassan beats your ass harder for being an American and basically never being useful ever again. Sansa hung out with Ozzy for a little too long in Camelot, which is the reason why her MP looks the way it does. The first gold single target caster in the game, her 80% battery and Buster MP made Merlin her perfect partner, though nowadays she doesn't even need him for an instant NP, so clearly this means Merlin needs to be buffed. If you get Nitocris' first skill to max, she insta-kills any bronze-class skeleton guaranteed, making her the best bone farmer in the game, so keep that in mind whenever you want to farm bones from a hunting quest if they're available. The fact that she has both an MP buff and her own arts buff now to go with her battery makes her stay even more relevant, in case her getting a 5-star version didn't already make that obvious. Big Da Vinci, before Kide molested her a little too hard that is. She's got the same 50% battery skill as Drake, but since her AoE MP only hits once per target, she's not a looper, but rather just a simple wave clear if you want to farm with her. Her more intended role now is to be an AoE challenge quest caster, since she's got both invul and defense pierce on her NP, self debuff immunity, guts, AoE crit chance debuff, and even a party arts buff for the arts team you'll be using her in. Summer Marie, who's straight out of Keijo with the weird shit she does to a volleyball. She's meant to be a crit support back in year 1 when Lozangle still didn't know what the fuck they were doing, which is why no one remembers that she exists except maybe Kitashan. Ilya joins Enkidu in the why the fuck did Lozangle give them a 50% battery club, because seriously, why the fuck did they give her one? It's not a complaint though, because now combining that with her MP buff that she's already had for a while and Koyenskaya means that any single target assassin should now fear the power of magical girl lollies. Gilgamesh, but considerably more chill as his summer outfit would appropriately suggest. Other than his party arts buff, his two other standout buffs are a party star gen buff, which turns his and potentially his teammates' MPs into star gens of their own, and a party debuff success buff, good for an ally who has RNG debuffs. A fine addition to the decent art support if FGO didn't have Tamamo or Castoria club that Boudica's the president of. No, Merlin doesn't actually need a buff either if somehow you took my comment from earlier seriously. The Buster meme support with a get out of jail free card and an MP that basically loops into itself, though his Buster support role has been kind of outsourced to Koyenskaya, who managed to get around all the sanctions. Still, he's a reliable support caster for challenge quests and the perfect support partner with Tamamo if you ever feel the need to use servants with that weird Buster NP and triple arts deck whenever he and Proto Merlin aren't running around Chaldea trolling everyone. Inshallah, the gacha will give you many copies of Scheherazade, my brothers, assuming King Hassan doesn't rip my head off for saying something so haram. She's a permanent AoE arts looper with an anti-king super effective mod and anti-berserker append, so if you have that unlocked, she can absolutely fuck a couple berserkers, which definitely sounds haram. The third of the Nero trio, not including whatever the fuck kind of Nero arcade has, they can keep her for all I care. Nero casters the Lamborghini of AoE caster farming, being a limited summer servant with a 50% battery and a targetable 50% attack buff. Just make sure to give her some buster buffs for maximum damage output in case you're distracted by the busters she already has. If Benny Enma is the red burb, then Cersei is the white burb, who's part of Niji Cancelled. She's basically the 4-star Sanso, 100% battery with a Buster single target MP, and thankfully she's got an MP buff so she can stampede people with a horde of pigs a little harder like she's out in the middle of Texas. Gee, I wonder why they call her Tituba. She's got a double party arts and Buster buff, something that I think is unique to her if I'm not mistaken, and paired with her charisma, she's a pretty good plug suit support for a farming team that uses both arts and Buster MPs, or even challenge quests for servants who have mainly those two card types. Her charisma buff now gives her a 30% charge, part of Lozangle's campaign to give everyone batteries as buffs and call it a day apparently, so she just needs an MP buff to go with that. If Pocket Chalk's favorite servant is Odysseus, then Mist's favorite servant is Anastasia. Another permanent arts looper with a 50% battery this time, though she doesn't have an MP buff like Chex Mix does from earlier, so keep that in mind if you have both of them. If you happen to have a sleep paralysis demon, it might be because of V. The Golem guy, who looks like he could be the final bad guy after Zigguard in a TCG anime or something. He's the permanent version of Kucaster, 3-star Buster AoE with an 80% battery with an MP buff. Even though Kucaster has better self buffs, Avis Braun has an anti-Zerk append, so something to consider, assuming you can even get enough goddamn coins for him in the first place. The son of Siegfried and Kriemhild, at least according to Kriemhild. Throw in Jean, Astolfo, Sigurd, Brunhilde, and the Volks, and you then have a weird FGO-themed family sitcom. Oh, and he's a welfare caster arts looper, by the way, so if you burned him on purpose back in the day because you don't like cardboard, man, I feel really bad for you. It must be really tough being a fucking idiot. Scotty. No, not that one. Not that one either. This one. the meta for 2 years of the game, and the first to popularize the concept of looping, which led to a farming revolution, if you will, as it made 3-turn farming possible for a lot more people. As much as we like to joke about how much of a retired boomer Scotty is now and how Lazangle fucking hates quick, a targetable 50% battery is still pretty good, and triple supports has brought her back a little bit for people who still like quick looping, mainly because they don't want to feel like they wasted the grails they gave to her, which is fair because she's FGO's version of if cryo, why hot? The opposite of Soberoni, caster version, unique as the game's first welfare single target caster, and while there's plenty of AoE servants who deal anti-demonic damage, caster Shutten is one of the few, I think anyway, that has as a single target. She's got a good portion of utility to go with that, MP seal, crit chance debuff, and sure hit. She also has an anti-Zerk append, which would be nice if Lazangle could stop stalling universal servant coins already. I'm not sure which is more amazing, Ilya getting a 50% battery or the fact that Miyu's MP isn't trash anymore, because the buff it gets removes her stupid HP demerit and replaces it with a unique staircase attack buff instead. It's still not quite enough to get people to use her as a serious support caster, but it does mean that Miyu's only one good skill buff away from becoming one, specifically if Lazangle could turn her first skill's arts buff into a party one instead. Rider Murasaki's original caster form and best friends would say Shonagon, but not because she wanted to. She's another arts looper with a 30% battery and anti-demonic damage, which means she hates demonic enemies and all her homies also hate demonic enemies. Ass Clap specializes in prostrate exams and anal probing, so if Billy were still with us, you would have definitely seen him show up in the next Gachimuchi episode. He's also another healing caster, but unlike the other two, his kit has additional effects that make him more useful. He also steals Irisveel's MP Guts gimmick, which means he's got a much more modern and updated kit as a healing caster, only for you to keep using Castoria anyway. The Gong. Love him, hate him, fear him, he has a dream to turn every meta support caster in the game into a bright shining star that does a million fucking damage. You may not like it, but this is what peak free-to-play performance looks like. And speaking of peak performance, to cap it off, we have the current face of FGO, Castoria. You already know what she does, right? Something something, arts loop, something something. Just don't let OSHA know that you're overworking her, they got their hands full down in Ohio already. I am Regend, the savior of France and the second honorary member of the Dragon Bullies Club, along with Martha. Just don't put him and Benny Enma in the same room together. Cursed-Arm looked at Bedivere and Caesar and decided to whip out his own massive arm to assert dominance. The only free-to-play assassin at the beginning of the game who got anywhere close to his intended role as a Stargen before Jack came out. He's a cheap and easy-to-use Stargen who can stay out of trouble with his evade skill that he definitely didn't steal from Ku back in FSN. Oh god, this bitch. The dreaded Sneck who shows up in a gold assassin card in your gacha rolls at any time that you're least prepared for it. To show that they have a fucked up sense of humor, Lazangle gave her both an anti-rider append and a double charisma for divine allies that affects herself too, which is nice on paper, but realistically the only time you'll ever use her is for like charmlock teams just for the memes. Now that Mothman number 1's in the game, Jinka can't stop trying to shank him in the middle of the Chaldea cafeteria. That's all she's really good for, to be honest. The only time you'll care about her otherwise is when she shows up on some summer CEs or when she's drunk. Guillotine Guy used to only have to worry about Mozart for Marie, now he's got to deal with Salieri too, which sounds like it could be the potential reverse harem plot for a future FGO event. To this day, he has one of the most useless skills in the game because it only works against like 2 people and only in story. If you're also a Dokta, do not let your 2 phantoms meet each other or else they'll run around screaming about how people should sing for them. If for whatever reason you need a cheap arts AoE on an assassin, Phantom's got you covered, which is amazing that a bronze servant like him even has an arts AoE MP at all. Ryuhari has not 1, not 2, but 3 whole defense debuffs throughout her kit, giving her the ability to shred one enemy's defense by 60% for 3 turns and 40% for the others, making her a very cheap plug suit utility servant with the added bonus of potentially charming her targets to buy her team a free turn on top of that. This is what Liz becomes when she gets cancelled at the start of her VTuber career. She does super effective damage against all the girls in the game, so she's a natural anti-female rider or berserker 4-star star, and a rare example of a female incel. With the power of memes, Jack turned into a lolly and became the best manual star gen in the game, something that no one cares about anymore because, well, she's still Quick. So she's been fighting against Senator Lazangle as hard as she can so that Quick can get some buffs, but there's been no progress on that so far. In the meantime, she's the 5-star version of Carmilla in that she also has a power mod against waifus, so the two of them can run around stabbing all the cute girls in the game while Hichikata stands around wondering where he went wrong as a dad. Schizo, but as a servant. Just like his lore, his kit is also just as schizophrenic, a product of Lazangle again not knowing what the fuck they were doing in the first year of the game, and because of how terrible of a servant he turned out to be, they've never even attempted to put another transformation style character into the game since. The very first servant in the game to get the full roundup of buffs to every single part of her active kit, MHX went from being an expensive joke character to a legitimately good single target assassin whose only remaining flaw now is the fact that she's still Quick, and tell her to stop eating so much goddamn instant ramen. Nasu saw his fans arguing about whether or not Shiki can kill servants, and he said bet, so now she's in the game, which is cool, other than the fact that there's never going to be another K&K rerun because fuck you. A reliable single target arts assassin with the added bonus of generating stars, cause, well, she's an assassin, which is becoming increasingly relevant now that JP has servants like Proto Merlin and Johanna. Depressed dad when he becomes a little too emo and starts dressing the part too. He's also another single target arts assassin with even better star gen and a targetable taunt that he can put on any one of his teammates, including himself, because he's that antisocial. 100 Face has the worst case of multiple personality disorder that you'll ever see, but that doesn't stop her from being a pretty decent solo assassin anyway. And friendly reminder that before y'all started cooming over Bargus 2 years ago, we had 100 Face as our first local buff woman representative. Dojinshi's the type of girl who will get you drunk and then rip your fucking guts out, which is kind of funny since she's already done that to you once before. Yeah, she's an AoE assassin with a 30% battery, which is cool until you realize that she's a limited servant and she can't loop either. Just put her and Raiko into the damn permapool already. Lazangle took your generic harem protagonist, gave him crimson hair or magenta hair or whatever that color is called, and turned him into a quick AoE assassin with an assorted set of extra utility, the most potent of which being his defense debuff and buff block on his new third skill. Make sure to roll for his mom whenever she's on raid up, otherwise he's going to be one very sad hamster. Serenity might as well just change her name to Raid. No, not that Raid, with how much she poisons the shit out of people with her buffs, making her the poison meme enabler with her double poison damage multiplier. And don't worry about the monster under your bed, that's just Serenity waiting for you to go to sleep. Assassin Skaha, another addition to our growing list of welfares that we'll never see again. Not that you're missing out on much, she's an AoE quick assassin with a self-taunt, so some people back in the day kept a second copy of her at level 1 as like an alternative George against caster enemies, but now we have Kichi Hogan, so that and JP already has the superior Summer Skaha anyway. Cleo could be Shy Lily's new best friend with her taste in ugly bastards, but in the meantime she's an AoE buster with comically good MP gen that lets her spam her MP despite not being arts. Just pray to Ozzy that her Imperial privilege hits that attack buff though. Somebody over at Lazangle enjoys watching Wodan's King Asan run so much they gave him a buff to his first skill that kind of makes me wonder if I'm not playing Genshin on accident with a skill description like that. The absolute gigachad of assassins in FGO, and the only one to this day with a full Berserker deck, because when he says he's gonna rip your head off, he means it. I get the feeling he'll get along quite well with that sus priest guy. Nobody talks about him much, but Yangqing is the MHX of 4-star assassins who went from boring Stargen who didn't really do anything special to Dynasty Warriors guy, especially with that ponytail he's got in his summer costume, who can vaporize your ass with hella crit damage now. His only flaw is that his third skill actually reduces his own star weight to let his teammates be able to crit more often that turn, but who cares when he basically floods the stage with crit stars like it's the state of California the past few months. The resident Mesugaki of FGO, Wu Zetian, is another granny lolly like Helena from before if Yang Yuhan has anything to say about her, but don't let that distract you from the fact that she's an excellent quick support in the absence of Scotty and a high damage single target assassin if she hits her Imperial Privilege buff at least, which, by the way, got a buff that didn't make her attack and defense buffs guaranteed, and therefore proves that Lozengel still has no idea what the fuck they're doing. As an assassin, Nitocris is more useful for her funny medjed memes than anything else, because Lozengel thought that making her insta-kill enemies before her MP does damage was a brilliant fucking idea. If it weren't for that, she could have been one of the best looping assassins in the game, but now NA's gotta wait for this anorexic-ass motherfucker. Lozengel heard our pleas for a K&K rerun and put Mochi into the game, since she's another single-target arts assassin with a 30% battery, who's also permanent, so that means she can spook you. While she hasn't gotten Yanqing levels of buffs, she's definitely better off than before, with an MP buff and a first skill buff that gives her anti-demonic and anti-curse damage. Kotaro's mom and the original Robussy, if for some reason you've developed a fetish for hot robot waifus after playing Atomic Heart. She's an AoE buster with an anti-demonic super effective mod, because apparently you can't be a Japanese servant without having some kind of anti-demonic damage. One of the only servants in the game where their 4-star version is actually better than the original. She's also a contender for the servant who's gotten the most irrelevant buffs in the game, to the point where getting spooked by Scheherazade would actually be a goddamn blessing. Semi-Truck is another AoE assassin with a 30% battery, basically the buster version of Shutendoji, but with less damage support and an annoying third skill that she can't use unless you have 8 stars first. But at least with the help of Koinskaya, she'll be able to hit and run better, especially now with her buffed NP. I'm not sure which was a worse idea, making limited 3-star servants or servant coins. Either way, I'll let you decide that on your own. Flair's cousin is a limited 3-star with a single target arts and a double advantage against humanoid and man attribute enemies. He might also be the only 3-star in the game with 2 costumes, because being a limited Japanese servant in a Japanese gacha game sure has its perks. Summer Ushi is the other really good 4-star star gen along with Yanqing. The only problem is that, well, she's a summer servant, so she's limited. She's an AoE quick with a 40% battery who surprisingly got an MP buff of her own that now lets her do super effective damage against lawful enemies, so that way she can join the other 2 Ushis on their occasional decapitation sprees. It would have made more sense if Consort Yu were a writer, if you know what I mean. She's a lot like Canis in that they're both story-locked servants from Lost Belts and super hyped up before they were playable, then turned out to be kind of shit when they came out, because turns out having an MP that yeets all your buffs first before it does damage is pretty dumb. But just like Dehya from Genshin, that doesn't make her any less hot. Little did you know, Donnie Yen is a super secret collab character in FGO as Old Man Lee, who's a 5-star single target arts after Kano Yoshiki binged all the Ip Man movies. He's definitely got a boomer kit though, simple skills and an MP that hits only once, but he more than makes up for it with reliable performance and the fact that he's just an old ass dude who punches you really, really fucking hard. The OG Pretender and the best assassin in the game, and it's not just because she's drawn by redrop, I promise. 50% battery, an infinite guts on a relatively low cooldown, good self buffs, and Scotty. What more do you want from an FGO waifu other than maybe her being buster or arts? By the way, Atsuko from Blue Archive called, she wants her smile back. If you've ever wanted to hear what Ganyu sounds like when she's pissed off, use Gray's NP. She's a welfare AoE buster with great self buffs, an anti-undead power mod, and more importantly, an NP buff, so maybe that one Ghostbusters movie wouldn't have sucked so much if they put Gray in it instead. Tomori's face is exactly the kind of face that Charlotte's gonna make at you when you make a comment about her melons. She's a bronze single target with both invul and defense pierce. The only thing bad about her is the fact that her third skill is another one of those gotcha skills, so you don't know which one you'll get, so pray that you get either the arts buff or the NP damage. Here's another set of pictures that corporate needs you to tell the difference from. The walking Symphogear reference, Hibiki has a lot of demerits for no good reason, but she's just glad she finally has a swimsuit alt now, since that's more than what some other servants can say. If Rosaria and Sarah from Genshin did the fusion dance, then you get Kichi Hogan, who's our latest welfare assassin with a quick AoE MP. That's it. The last of the FSN crew, y'all should already know this guy. While at the beginning of the game he was meme-worthy for being the Zerk version of Ku, which funnily enough is an actual thing, as we'll see later, he got sidelined as more and more Berserkers got added to the game, only to then come back into relevance with Grail Fronts, so now he's got a second lease on life as the undisputed Grail Front King, so whenever you see a Zerk slot in one of those events, you know who to throw in. Yo, Armored Core 6 just leaked the main character and it's this guy. He was was the go-to quick looper back when Scotty was meta if you didn't have a high MP level Dantes, but you did have a few MP levels on him, which means that he's also vacationing down into Maldives with Scotty. Wait a minute. For all the Dynasty Warriors jokes that I made throughout this video, Lubu actually is out of a Dynasty Warriors game somewhere. He's got the Fergus issue of his second skill sometimes denying any offensive buffs that he gets, but otherwise he's a burst crit Zerk with a single target buster. I didn't mention this back when I was talking about Chen Gong, but Chen does have a targetable buster buff that has additional effects for Zerks, but if you're not careful, he'll just turn Lubu into another one of his nukes. Ironically, for someone who hates oppressors to the point where it's basically his entire character, he dresses up like a BDSM enjoyer. He's part of the Low Star Heroes Club that includes Arash and Paracelsus as servants who are instrumental in helping new or free-to-play players farm FGO more efficiently, despite looking like he too is straight out of an ugly bastard dojin. The Giga Chad of Berserkers, which makes a little too much sense seeing that I also call Karna the Giga Chad of Lancers. Kintoki started out as the best single target Zerk in the game with his 50% battery, then got sidelined when break bars came out since he couldn't just one-shot bosses anymore, and then came back when Koyanskaya bailed him out of low-tier jail. Lazengel even gave him an NP buff on top of that to make sure he'll be sticking around for a while this time. Rad Vlad, as opposed to Doomslayer Vlad from earlier. He's another Zerk who saw a comeback of his own thanks to Castoria and a couple of buffs, including 2 NP buffs, which might make him the only servant in the game to have their NP buff twice like this, even if the first one was just to fix his subpar scaling because Lazengel somehow thought he was going to be too busted at the beginning of the game. Now, if only they could do the same for Media too. Fluffy Boy is a weird utility berserker with an arts NP that slaps an abnormally long 6-turn attack and defense debuff, with the first turn reducing it by an extra 40%, so just like Matahari, you can put him to use as a cheap plug suit utility servant. And say hi to him the next time you run into him in Hades. And you thought, Consort, you really loved horses. This dude made his horse a fucking senator or something. Holy shit. He's similar to Asterios in that he's also another low-star Zerk with offensive skills, but a utility MP, but his offers a defense debuff, skill seal, and MP seal, all for 3 turns, though the MP seal's RNG. Still, I can't think of anyone else right now who has a 3-turn skill seal MP seal, so keep him in mind as another cheap plug suit support. How many times have I made a League of Legends joke for this guy again? He's just a standard buster wave clear, but since he's got no battery, just stick to Spartacus. Liz's girlfriend, according to some Japanese artist who spent way too many years drawing a now barely relevant chibi manga of FGO. She's like Darius where she's another 3-star buster wave clear with no battery, but she's a cute yandere who's gonna blow us all up in the middle of the night, so who cares. Eric, the guy everyone forgets to the point where they even forget what his rarity is. To his credit, he's got the Bedivere effect where his MP overcharge is a good self buff, so he hits harder than his rarity might have you believe, but he's got no batteries, so just keep using Spartacus like I told you to. Somebody over at Lazengel, most likely just Wada Arco herself, really likes old school American diners with the kind of costume they gave Tomacat, and hey, I'm all for it. Just like Tama Lancer, Tama Cat's buffs finally give her a way to deal with the self-stun on her NP, but at this point, I care more about the fact that she throws an omelet at you that explodes. Who the hell gave her the Anarchist's cookbook? And just like Tama Cat, Fran's NP stuns her for 2 turns because that's a brilliant fucking mechanic to deal with, but at least to make up for it, Fran not only has an NP buff, but also a slightly higher than usual NP scaling for literally no reason other than she's really cute. Funnily enough, she can even loop with Scotty as long as you make sure to deal with her self-stuns, so she was an alternative Lancelot back in the day if you had BB and you prefer Fran screaming over Zerkerlots. The opposite of Fran has a slightly lower than normal MP scaling, specifically on his NP buff, oddly enough, and I don't even want to begin trying to rationalize why Lazengel would do that, unless someone made a typo on the wiki. To make up for this, his buffs give him hella crit damage and 2 extra power mods against dragon and giant enemies to make him a little more versatile with his damage, so now all he needs is a 50 caliber AR-15 to really put those dragons in the dirt. The nurse is in, and you better listen to her instructions or she will make you, and yes, that is a threat. She was the Merlin before Merlin with a 3-turn targetable buster buff, and her NP can basically nullify any enemy NP, assuming they don't have magic resist, that is, but for most of you, she'll be more useful for her dojins and random ass amputation memes. Here's the Berserker coup that I was talking about earlier, surprisingly he's more chill than the OG version. He combines Ku's survivability as a Lancer with the explosive power of Berserkers, and he's blessed with great stats and an MP buff that removes one defensive buff first, so he functions great as a solo or general use Zerk. He's also not exactly thrilled about that Exo-Primal game that Capcom's working on for obvious reasons. If Johnny Bravo were a Japanese show, Kintoki would be Johnny and Raiko would be his mom. The first 5-star AoE Berserker in the game, and the only one for like 2 or 3 years because Lazinga was too scared to put in another one. She's since gotten a crit damage buff to go with her Starweight skill and an MP buff, too bad she's largely been replaced by God Juna and Morgan in the meantime. The original Banana Oni, who, to this day, is still traumatized from what we did to her back in Rashomon, and no, I'm never gonna stop making that joke. With her second skill buff, almost her entire kit is meant to support her boss in some way, even her NP, so she's legit not a bad support for either Shuten Assassin or Caster if you have both of them. She'll also probably somehow end up on one of Giri's cooking streams one day. Lazingle didn't want to leave out MHXA while they were buffing MHX, so now gender-bent Darth Maul not only has a super effective mod against Sabers, but she also now has an anti-good alignment power mod, so your single-target archers are going to be put out of business if they don't have super effective mods of their own. Join the dark side indeed. Doomslayer Vlad isn't the only one who rips and tears until it's done, because Mayo Man's right there with him with his own gimmick of doing both more crit damage and MP damage the lower his health is, just like the Yuri Pirates, except he's a Zerk, so it'll be a lot more relevant on him. His second skill buff finally gives him a guts that lets him put his insane damage potential to use, which means he can now go rip and tear even better with his Hungarian wife and adopted English daughter. Don't let Cha-Cha anywhere near Barney, whatever you do. She's the game's first welfare Zerk and an AoE Zerk at that. Too bad she doesn't have a battery, so all people remember her for now is that one scene where she's eating udon or whatever it was out of a holy grail or something. Jeff Bezos saw Elon Musk moonlighting as a 5-star server in FGO and didn't want to get left behind. Too bad he only ended up as a 4-star in this game though. Penicillin is a support single target Zerk with 2 buff types of her own and an MP regen buff that gives her 20% charge every turn for 3 turns, so she can easily fit into your farming teams whenever you need a single target somewhere. If Amazon ever had that fast death delivery service, Achilles is going to be the first one to get it, and not because he actually wants it. The second welfare Zerk, and way more used than Cha-Cha despite only being a 1-star because she's the closest FGO will ever get to getting an MP skip button. She now has an MP buff, so clearly she's the best farming Zerk in the game. Summer Shana with the power of death metal and buster memes. Single target buster with an anti-divine super effective mod, which is very useful if you don't have anyone else with that. Nyaltra likes doing her best grumpy cat impression, and when she reaches her 3rd ascension, she starts cosplaying Akuma Nimune with that womb tattoo she's got. Or maybe it's the other way around, actually. She's a single target crit Zerk, and she's probably the most metal character Saori Hayami's ever had to do in her career. If you call Summer Jalter Jerker, I will personally end you. She's another welfare Zerk, a compensation for people who never got to roll for Jalter, but at this point you'll never see her again either, probably because she's too busy drawing dojins with Otsukabe Hime all the damn time. Consort used Husbando, whom she stole straight out of Wolong, a 5-star crit Zerk with quick AoE MP, the second ever 5-star AoE Zerk in the game in fact. His 3-turn Invul Pierce gives him prime utility as a challenge quest speedrunner with some Scotty support. What the hell happened to the balancing team at Los Angeles in between Shangyu and this dude? Sana taught Arjuna a couple tricks and now he's running around blowing up entire universes or some shit in such a bad power trip that Putin's gonna try to learn a few things from him. 30% battery and a combination of self buffs so potent that you almost don't even need any other AoE in the game with him around. There's a reason why we call him God Juna. Well, until he runs into people with magic resist, that is. The second limited 3-star in the game, which is still really stupid, changed my mind, and a Rance knockoff with the way his armor looks in his 1st ascension. He's a crit Zerk with buffs that make him stronger the more he attacks, and his single target buster MP also has both invul and defense pierce in case that ever comes in handy. When she's not streaming, Hyakumen Tenbara Salome is a bronze single target arts Zerk whose objective suddenly turns into survive the moment she uses her 3rd skill, but people care more about her streams instead. Summer used to be the premier arts looper alongside Spishtar, but she's been real quiet ever since Summer Ibuki showed up. She's still got great challenge quest potential though with her Invul Pierce, so any grailed Summer... owners out there, as a Grail Tamamo user, don't worry, I know what it feels like to have your waifu called obsolete by a clueless community. If Ku Alter is the Dino Husbando, then it was only inevitable that we'd get a Dino waifu, and that's Kijo. She's yet another single-target Buster Zerk, and since JP never reran the Fate Requiem collab, she's now officially the rarest 4-star character in the game. Now that I've seen Bryn in a swimsuit, I can kinda tell why Zigguard would still want to tap that. Her third skill is basically Tichiba's double arts and Buster buff, but only for Brynhilda's beloved servants, and with a 30% efficiency, and she's the first non-5-star AoE Zerk since Paul. Do you feel old yet? The first ruler in the game, and the one everyone fears whenever there's a ruler raid up. She's got a much needed and very late buff to her second skill, so it's an actual usable skill now. Would have been nice if she started with that, but at this point most people care more about her costume, which is really nice until you realize they didn't update her animations with it. Yet another common Losangle L. The imposter Shiro, who's always looking for a grail because he totally won't do anything bad with it. He's an absolutely trustworthy man of God, and Catholic priests can always be trusted in Nasuverse, right? He's also gotten the MHX treatment, and as a result turned into an absolute unit of a DPS ruler, and oh yeah, his MP still deletes all enemy buffs. And of course, we can't talk about DPS rulers without talking about Summer Martha. A firm believer of the swole Jesus Christ meme, Martha just wants to talk to you about our Lord and Savior, and if you don't, her fists will talk to you for her. The absolute hard counter to some annoying big titty AI girl, and a simple but tanky Buster DPS whenever you need to punch a god in the teeth. I completely forgot that they gave the cocaine-addicted detective a 50% battery too, so I guess Enkidu and Ilya can have a tea party with him or something. Now that we have Proto Merlin and Johanna in JP, he's now a fully fledged arts crit meme who smacks bitches with his Pimcane, sorry, I meant to say Invul and Defense Pierce, and perma shreds their defense so he can smack them even harder. Xi Jinping saw his good buddy Putin in FGO and decided to join him, though he ended up sounding like Lelouch, which is probably an upgrade, not too sure though. He's most infamous for his great soloing, but you can also use him as an arts crit DPS like Holmes, who doesn't need as much babysitting since he's got a lot of his own sustain effects. Yelan, but in a Santa outfit, and she learns Spanish and can dunk you into Liyue Harbor, which is something some of you can only dream of. She's a crit support ruler who can generate stars in a variety of ways, and can either use them herself or help direct them to a teammate, just don't use her second skill on Berserkers since that won't do shit. The third arts crit ruler we have so far seems to be a bit of a trend. Luvia, however, is a perma 4-star, so when you get spooked by a ruler, she's probably the one you'd rather see. Don't let her rarity deceive you though, she can and will German suplex you after Santikets does with a buffed MP and an anti-evil super effective mod. Also, the same people who complained about her art style back when she was released are the same people who now bitch about how bad Dehya is in Genshin, because imagine taking a gacha game that seriously. God, I've seen way too much hentai of Ruler Toria. Give me more! She does have a bit of a Boudica effect going on, since she's set up to be a wave clear or reloading Buster AoE with the 40% battery. Only problem is that her attack rating is really fucking low for that. She's also the servant version of the Mages Association Mystic Code with a unique command deck skill, but she's got some more useful assets than that, in my humble opinion. Speaking of another ruler with great assets, Himiko is the gender-bent ruler version of Super Orion, and she's going to play baseball by using her heads as enemies as baseballs so she can smash a fucking mirror through them. Pair her with Merlin and another sustained support like Tamamo, though she's probably not going to be too happy about all the mirror smashing. If only Karen could slap us in the face with a wad of cash. God knows we'll need it for all the servants ahead of us this year on NA. Losangle heard how we like batteries so much, and so they gave Karen a charge effect on every single one of her skills, making her a Black Grail quick looper. She's also got an MP buff that also gives her a new anti-chaotic super effective mod, so hopefully you can find some Scotties now on your support list. Life has many doors, and Dantes knows that better than most, especially since he's got to kill Honest Mid's Michael again in Lumina. His second skill buff turns him into another Black Grail quick looper like Karen, so combined with his MP buff, he can go Chateau Teeth even harder. Just like her definitely not an older sister, Jalter has a costume and still doesn't have an animation update because a small indie developer development studio, please understand. Jean's Grief Seed is still a Buster Crit meme, and Lazangle doubled down on that by giving her an MP buff that gives her even more stars, so slap hot sands on her and watch the world burn with her 122k foe Jalter. Angry Mango is like a strawberry. He's actually not angry, not most of the time anyway, and he's not a mango. But because Type Moon loves their shitty jokes, he is still a complete meme. I mean, what other gacha game out there has a character in the free-to-play gacha pool that's harder to get than their highest rarity characters in the actual gacha, and is for the most part complete dog shit. Not that that's gonna stop me from flexing my MP30 mango. The final step in Medusa's Pokemon evolution, Gorgon's a Buster Crit meme just like Jalter, but the way she crits is by crushing your head with her tits. Honestly, and hear me out, not the worst way to go. Good luck fishing for her in story, though. If Bao ever starts playing FGO, this will be her favorite servant, and no, it's not because of the headless guy. Blide Elden Ring is a quick crit Avenger in this game, and his second skill buff gives him a bit of specialty against man attribute enemies, but he'll spend more time running away from Bao because his name is not Scott Arthur. Sally was definitely the edgy kid in school who sat in the corner of the room composing symphonies in the middle of class. He is at least a higher rarity than Mozart, if that'll make him feel any better. A perk of being a 3-star Avenger is that you'll instantly get him MP5 if you roll any extra GSSR, so keep that in mind if you're into musically inclined but mentally disturbed husbandos straight out of Persona like him. Mommy Shana, 2 words I would have never been able to say 15 years ago, but just like the One Piece, she's real now, baby. Her buffs are a crash course on how clueless Lazangle was when they first put her out, and Genshin players think MiHoYo handled Dehya badly. They don't know shit, dude. First Ascension Spishtar is her best costume. Change my mind, I'll wait. The Arts Looper with a capital L, and more or less synonymous with arts looping the moment Castoria started existing, though that capital L is starting to stand for something else the moment Summer Ibuki also started existing too. I forgot Ushi Alter is also voiced by Saori Hayami, so this might give Nyalter a run for her money. She's a quick crit Avenger, but surprisingly, despite her low HP as an Avenger, she really shines as a soloer, as Plushie demonstrates. And before you ask, I have Tyra on her 3rd stage because I like the way she holds her swords. It's not for any other reason, I swear. The originator of the Moon Cancer class, which is appropriate since BB's the type of bitch on Twitter to tell you to die from cancer. Ironically, she helps Nightingale run the Chaldea Infirmary, and she's been going airsofting as a hobby, which is why she got a much needed 3rd skill buff that gives her her own arts buff finally, that she needs to be a better single target arts crit. Just like her OG, Summer BB also got a buff to her own self-mod skill, but she gets an additional 30% attack buff and free 20 stars every time she uses her extra attack, so that way it's much easier to card lock a full BB chain and keep smashing her tits against enemies, critting them until they die or her card lock expires. She's also definitely the type to troll Jalter and her Dojin crew with AI art that she made using Stable Diffusion, and she's what Numi dreams of becoming one day, but never will. Jinako is the closest we'll get to having Sakamata Chloe in FGO because they both stay at home all day, play video games, and never shower. On the rare times that she touches grass, she's an Arts AoE Moon Cancer with a buff 3rd skill that now gives a 30% MP damage buff, so she might be able to Arts Loop now, but I'm not sure. Probably she can, I mean, what can't Castoria help loop anyway? Her MP is named after the only other gacha that's more popular than FGO, and she cosplays as one of those mannequins in the RE8 DLC with the way she runs around slamming people in her first ascension. Also, don't ask me why she's a Moon Cancer because I don't fucking know. The planet fucker's back, and she's in a swimsuit this time and hijacked the moon to fuck the planet even harder, which kinda sounds like if Dead Space 3 turned into like a hentai or something. She's another extra class arts looper, just remember to always use her first skill on the first turn, and watch her do her best Guantanamo Bay impression with all the waterboarding she's gonna do. Pastrami Melt still tap dances on your face until you die, and this time she's got buffs to all 3 of her skills, just needs an MP buff for the full MHX treatment. The Katawa Shoujo Transplant is a single target quick crit alter ego with a 30% battery and ramping crit damage, and she can generate her own stars, just be careful not to pop her 3rd skill when you need to use her teammates as MPs. Brynhilda's been wondering who's been running around Chaldea recently using her own MP, and it's Milky. Passion Lip, sorry. She's a Buster Wave Clear with good self buffs and an MP buff. Her first skill gives her a debuff immunity that's meant to counter her 3rd skill, but since it can block 3 debuffs total, she's sort of a debuff tank as well, if she uses her taunt on a turn where enemies use single target debuffs. Just use her for her tanks, and by that I mean her giant ass Metal Gear looking hands, obviously. Takanashi Kiara's original class, but she ain't here to sell you fried phoenix, that's for sure. Just like her Moon Cancer class, she's an alter ego arts looper with a 50% battery, but unlike her Moon Cancer version, alter ego Kiara is also a great challenge quest AoE with both invul and defense pierce on her NP, so she can truly fuck the world raw. FGO's version of left and right, too bad they're modeled after Liz, so guess what they don't have? They're single target buster alter egos and are gonna Pacific Rim your asshole with the single highest MP damage buff in the game, minus like Oberon, I guess. The best thing about them is that if you played both their original and rerun events, you could get both, which is something you'll probably never get to do with the Valkyrie welfares. Bedge is another buster AoE who, after years of getting shafted up the ass by quick and arts looping, finally got bailed out by both Koyanskaya and Oberon, and with triple skill buffs of her own, she's ready to be the best AoE assassin in the game again. Wake up, Okatan, they're both coming out on NA this year. Sitting Master's apprentice, Sitanai, who's definitely not Ilya, and her polar bearer is definitely not Shiro. Her claim to fame, other than being a definitely not Ilya clone, and therefore justifying the uselessness of Chloe's buff success buff for anyone who looks like Ilya, is being the only single target arts alter ego in the game. Also, don't post her final ascension on the subreddit Discord. Quiet from MGS5 looks a little bigger than I remember. She's another buster AoE alter ego with the biggest sprite in the game, and her gimmick is her first skill that keeps stacking HP buffs for up to 10 turns, which she can then exchange for MP charge with her second skill, or she can keep them for both more buster damage on her MPs and tank enemy NPs with her first skill buff. And as this guy from the wiki points out, Wada Arco really hit up the Dean anime to give KP her latex outfit, and that's only half a meme. An evil KP looking at you like you're a snack is fucking hot. Remember Tricky from Madness Combat? This is him now, and he's still waiting for Madness Combat 12 so he can try to kill the Auditor a second time, which reminds me of what he tried doing in Hand Kill. In the meantime, he's a quick AoE alter ego with an 80% battery and hella buffs for chaotic evil servants, including himself. And ladies, if your man crawls out of the bathtub looking like this, I'm sorry, but it might be a little too late for you, and I speak from, experience. Abby has the world's most lethal teddy bear that somehow hits you 6 times when she only swings twice. Oh, and of course, her tentacles go slappy. She's a single target buster with the infamous buff removal before damage, so that way her tentacles can fuck you with no lube. Oh, and she also stole some Keyblades when Disney wasn't looking and delayed Kingdom Hearts 4 even more. Hokusai's original class, and a foreigner arts looper with an anti-man super effective mod and anti-berserker append, same as Abby. By the way, Arknights called, they want their dusk back. Man, if this is what MHX looks like when she adds another X to her name, imagine what MHXXX would look like. In the meantime, she's a single-target arts foreigner who's effective against other foreigners, sabers, and the usual zerks. She really wants that bonus, probably because she's sick and tired of eating instant ramen all the goddamn time. Ina's Chinese cousin who's very cute and borrowed Ao-chan for a little bit, which is why she now has Blue Flame like a StarCraft 2 Hellion. She has an anti-burn gimmick where she does super effective damage against any burn targets, and she can put burn on enemies by combining her first and third skills when they attack her, or by giving her some burn command codes, preferably both. She'd also be a natural metalhead with how much she loves smacking people with her own instruments. Sonny Briscoe Lilly, who's a quick looper with a 50% battery and an anti-sky super effective mod, and his third skill buff makes him an even better looper. His MP also gives his team 20% charge, so he can enable double DPS farming teams if you prefer that. No! Voyager, run! Not to be outdone, Summer Abbey also has a 50% battery with a buster AoE, so you know what that means. Brings a whole new meaning to the word cannonball, huh? I'm surprised her Rio face isn't a subreddit Discord emote, but then I realized they'll probably ban you for it. Bochi the painter, I guess. Her kit is just as insane as she is, but there is a method to the madness. S2, S3, S1 in that order. Basically, she puts curse stacks on her own teammates, then absorbs them to convert them into charge to get her MP faster. And when she does get her MP, she turns into a fucking SCP and murders everything. She's just like Bao and her Blide fetish. You can't fix her, but you can damn well try. And finally, we have our Kohai, the perverted gender-bent eggplant plant who's secretly best friends with Suisei. God knows how much bullshit Galahad needed to put up with, and in fact, it's probably the reason why he ditched her ass. She's got 2 skill sets, a Singularity one and a Lost Belt one. With the first one, Mashed Potatoes is one of the best defensive supports in the game, and the perfect counter to enemy bosses who have Pierce Invul but no Pierce defense. Her second skill set is, because even with both skill buffs, she turns into this weird Buster crit who super buffs just one of her Buster cards. This does make a little sense. We tend to put Mash as our anchor because she has 0 cost, and if she ever does show up, that means that the rest of the team's either dead or about to die. So with her Buster crit buffs, Invul Pierce, and Defense Pierce, she can certainly clutch it out, but she has 2 Buster cards in more ways than one, so why limit her buffs to just 1? That, and if you've team wiped to the point where Mash has to come out, well, skill issue. So to me, she's still more useful for having 2 taunts in her Ortnax form, or whatever it's called, with one of them having a free invul to go with it, or her 30 star bomb that her teammates can also use. You still can't grail her, though you can 2k foe her, I think. She still isn't Bond 10 yet, and to add insult to injury, Toki from Blue Archive stole her VR headset. But if nothing else, at least she's nowhere near as annoying as Paimon. Hold this fucking skip button, Genshin players. 5.5 years and 300 servants later, here we are again at the end of another how-to video. Honestly, it's insane that I still got it in me somehow to crank out these videos like this, especially since for the last 1.5 years, as you guys probably know, I haven't exactly been all that active on my own YouTube channel. But that's finally gonna change, at least a little bit, since as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I'm now officially a full-time content creator. And while I do plan to create content for other gachas that I play, I also plan to keep making FGO content for as long as I play the game, and a lot of it's gonna be over at my Twitch channel, so give that a follow to watch me lose my mind over playing 7 gacha games at the same time. Shoutouts to all of you who've been patiently waiting for me to put out the next video in the how-to series. It's been 3,000 years, I know, but finally it's here and it's done. Thank you all very much for watching. I am once again counting on all your guys' support going into the future now more than ever, and we'll see you in the next video, whatever it may be. Peace!